What is going on, everybody? It is good to be back. Welcome to the Week 8 NFL Power Rankings. We're going to get right into it, but before we do, please do hit that like button down below. Really helps. Share the video and support my channel. All right, starting at the bottom, the New York Jets are going to remain a tier gap below the rest of the NFL. I will say that I think some of the discussions about throwing Adam Gase, on the stake and this team just completely not wanting to play for him, that's faded a little bit. It's obviously a situation where they want to fire Adam Gase at the end of the season, but this team's a little more competitive. They get their guy back, and Sam Darnold, Denzel Mims, high draft pick, is out there making some plays, a little more competitive. We'll see if that lasts after they lose by 45 points to the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend. We have a tier gap up to the most embarrassing team in the NFL. Some of these teams are just bad. They don't have talent. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys, who are not a football team. They are a collection of athletes and potential, and it's just fallen through the roof. And obviously the Dak Prescott injury hurts, but you got to point to Mike McCarthy. I mean, my God, did Aaron Rodgers carry this clown for a decade? He just can't coach. And these are problems that showed in Green Bay. Lack of identity on both sides of the ball, but particularly on offense, where he is supposed to orchestrate this thing. I know he doesn't call the plays, but yeah, there's that. There is the lack of discipline. Defenders seem to forget how to play football when Mike McCarthy is their coach. You just don't come prepared. It's been a disaster. I don't know how you bring Mike McCarthy back after this season. Just a train wreck and an embarrassment to anyone that has to watch this team play football. Right now, I think they're scheduled for Sunday Night Football. Please don't do that to us, NFL. I know it's the Cowboys, but God, this team is just not acceptable, frankly. Then you have an actual literal football team, unlike the Dallas Cowboys, in the Washington football team. Now, they are the opposite, really. They don't have the talent, especially on offense. I mean, the defense here is nice. There's no denying that. But offensively, it's just not pretty. It's just Kyle Allen trying to run around, make plays. Occasionally, Terry McLaurin does his thing and creates big plays. He is just phenomenal. But other than him, they just don't have anything. Defensively, they're fine. They're solid. They got a good pass rush. They have a pretty solid secondary. So they're capable. They're competent. They at least fight. Also got to say, how great is that Ron Rivera finished his cancer treatment? Seems he's going to be good to go for the foreseeable future. So that's awesome news. Certainly a lot of feel-good stories with this team, but I just don't think they're a very good football team. Then you have the New York Giants, +1. They fell apart to the Eagles. They remain kind of the same team here, where defensively they're surprisingly average. I thought this defense would be one of the worst in the league. They're just not. I think Joe Judge at least has this team playing hard and tackling well. They need more talent on that side of the ball for sure. And then offensively, they proved that they can move the ball per usual, and that Daniel Jones is just going to have his moments. Let's just leave with that. So then we have a tier gap up to teams that are much more competitive on a week-to-week basis, but certainly not playoff teams. And I will say this next team is making a push to being in the last tier we just talked about, which is teams that just don't really stand a chance against most competent football teams. And that's the Jacksonville Jaguars, who did definitely put up a fight this week against the Chargers. They've had some really nice moments this year, but they just haven't been, frankly, that competitive over the last few weeks. But this week they did show that they can move the ball. Gardner Minshew showing again that when he goes against zone-heavy teams, he's much better. Chargers, obviously very zone-heavy. They put up 29 points this week. But against man-cover teams, that lack of physical traits just shows up much more, where Gardner Minshew needs to do a lot more creating as opposed to taking what's given, kind of the difference in approaches there. So the Jags are technically going to climb up a spot because how bad the Cowboys are, but still not looking great for the Jags. I think they're very much in the Trevor Lawrence debate. Then we have the Denver Broncos. And Broncos fans were mad that I didn't boost them up after a big upset over the Patriots. And it really came back to Drew Lock, who was miserable in this game against the Chiefs. He just doesn't really play in structure at all. He doesn't seem to have a processor at all. 2 more picks in this game. I just don't trust him at all. And it's honestly, it's not even a scenario where he doesn't have any help. I like the play caller in Shermer. He's got good blocking here. He's got receivers here, despite Cortland Sutton being out. So I'm not really on the Drew Lock train at all. I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, wait and see. I just haven't been impressed by him in the absolute slightest. So +1 for the Broncos, again, because of the Cowboys. But the Broncos, certainly a team, could be looking for a quarterback in the offseason. Then we have the Vikings. They were on bye, and they used that bye to effectively give up on the season. They traded away Yannick Ngakoue, just trying to get any sort of bailout they can on that trade that's looking like a total bust for them. I think they thought they would be much more competitive. I didn't mind the trade from the start, but just didn't work out. So they're going to stay put at 26. I can't imagine they'll be all that competitive against the Packers this week or turn their season around or anything like that. Then we have the Atlanta Falcons, also going to stay put here after the collapse against the Detroit Lions. The fourth quarter collapses for the Falcons. They just keep finding new ways to do it, whether it's an onside kick or screwing up a scenario that was well covered, by the way, on Twitter with the Indiana-Penn State game. I even tweeted that morning that coaches need to take notes that you should let your opponent score so that you can get the ball back. We've seen way too many times these old coaches be too stubborn and say, we'll kick the field or we'll go and score if we can. We're not going to milk this clock down and take the game-winning field goal. We'll play defense. It's just stupid. The modern way to do this is you let the other team score if you're Detroit so that you can get the ball back to go score a touchdown. And Atlanta, all they had to do was knee the ball out and kick a field goal. Instead, Todd Gurley stumbles into the end zone. Detroit celebrates the touchdown, and Matthew Stafford puts the dagger in their hearts and probably officially on their season if it wasn't already in there. So they're going to stay put at 25. And then 24, the Cincinnati Bengals. Really tough fight against the Browns. They continue to be this team that is just not going to win a lot of games, but they're going to be in most games. I'm actually excited to see them take on the Titans this week. I think that could actually be more competitive than people think. Just Joe Burrow, he just keeps up. He doesn't back down. He knows that he's probably not going to win in the back of his mind, but he's going to do everything he can. This defense just stinks, though. I also wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry ran for 300 yards and they lost by 30. But let's move on. The Houston Texans going to drop down 3 spots. They just got demolished by the Green Bay Packers. Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, the stars on this team are just so disappointed. You come into the season with expectations and it completely falls out from under you. They're still a competitive team. They're still going to win some games this year, but just hasn't been in the cards for them this year. And how gruesome has their schedule been? I mean, seriously, they played the Steelers, the Ravens, the Packers, the Titans, the Chiefs. That's 5 losses right there to some of the best teams in the league. So just a rough start. They'll be okay. They'll still be competitive, but just a rebuild ahead for the Texans post-Bill O'Brien. And then the final team in this tier of competitive teams, but teams that I don't see being playoff teams, is actually going to be the New England Patriots. Man, I really regret, after the Seattle game, admitting I was wrong on Cam Newton, because the last 2 weeks, this is the Cam Newton that I predicted we would see, with the weird, funky throwing mechanics, the inability to truly push the ball downfield, combined, of course, with the fact that the Patriots just don't have a lot of help for him. It certainly doesn't help, but Cam Newton just doesn't look good. He's thrown 5 picks in the last 2 weeks. It hasn't just been the arm talent, which certainly has dropped off. It's been the decision-making. It's been holding on the ball way too long, standing flat-footed in the pocket. He is playing like a backup quarterback right now in the last 2 weeks, and I don't see an end in sight. And even the defense here hasn't been up to standards. And Belichick, I think, is reeling right now, kind of coming to grips a little bit with the fact that he just probably needs to take a look in the mirror as a GM. He's done a lot of great things over his career, but right now, it just hasn't been there for him. So then we have a tier gap up, and this next tier are interesting teams that probably aren't playoff teams. There is one playoff team in there that is just going to win their crappy NFC East, and the Eagles is in this next tier. But the next 4 teams, spoiler alert, the Eagles are going to be 17. But the next 4 teams are really just interesting teams that probably won't make the playoffs, but they're really tough outs, and they have some promise on their season. So that's going to start with the Miami Dolphins, who are making the transition to Tua this week. And if he looks great, this is going to be a big boost for the Dolphins. Like, if Tua looks really good in the same way that Herbert looked really good, the way that Burrows looked really good, if he is looking like one of 3 outstanding entry-level rookie quarterbacks here. The Dolphins are a very competitive football team, and a team that, frankly, with the way the Bills are playing right now, can compete for the AFC East. So really excited to see Tua come out this week. It's going to be a big decider for the potential for this season for the Dolphins, and obviously for their future as well. Then we have the Detroit Lions climbing up 3 spots, ripping off another win this week. It was not pretty, but it does feel like the type of win. When it comes at this point in the season, the difference here would have been you're either 2-4 or you're 3-3, and the way they did it, where they were done, they were not going to win that game, and then they pulled it out. Matthew Stafford, to see your quarterback do that for your team, that game-winning drive was one of the most special moments of the season. Detroit has some talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Kenny Golladay is spectacular. They're getting TJ Hawkinson going. Their offensive line's actually pretty good. They're starting to integrate DeAndre Swift a lot more. So Detroit has something here. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. They're going to have a hard time making the playoffs in the NFC, but they, to me, are doing something nice here, and I don't know if that's ultimately good or bad, because if they end up winning 6 or 7 games, I don't know if you let Matt Patricia go. But regardless, it was a huge win, a huge comeback for the Detroit Lions, who have done a lot of things to impress me over the last couple weeks and deserve to be recognized for it. We don't talk Detroit enough on this channel. Then we have the Carolina Panthers. They're going to stay put. They are exactly who I have been preaching that they are for the last few weeks. They're a very good football team. They're not a great football team. For the most part, they're going to be scoring about 24, 25 points a game. And it's just a matter of, is that defense going to hold up? That young defense that's shown some nice things, but just ultimately is not a very good group. And there you go. They lose 24-27 this week. They put up a fight against a really good Saints team. They are a good, not great football team with, in my opinion, a very bright future. Although Joe Brady, I could see being the top head coach candidate, and that would be a blow for the Panthers. But all in all, good things for the Carolina Panthers. Then we have the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert continues to light up the world. The cannon arm. You know, I was not a Herbert guy, but I did say, if you want any consolation here for me, I did say that the second he gets drafted, he's going to have one of the 3 or 5 strongest arms in the league. I got some pushback on that, and he clearly has an elite top arm. I wouldn't put it there with Josh Allen, but I think it's comparable to Patrick Mahomes. It's comparable to Aaron Rodgers in his prime, Matthew Stafford, which is my new comp for Justin Herbert. It is just spectacular, and he's so natural. He's playing with so much confidence right now. It really makes me go back and wonder what Oregon was doing running this bubble screen offense. It just didn't really show us this version of Justin Herbert, and it's really fun to see him play with that swagger and confidence and leadership, because you just didn't see that at Oregon. You didn't see the excitement that you're seeing right now, and it's really fun to watch. The Chargers are not a perfect football team. Defensively, they have not been as good as you'd like. And for all the good things Herbert is doing, he's making a ton of spectacular plays. But on a play-to-play basis, the more consistency, the more consistent rhythm plays, that's been sort of an issue for this team. But again, Herbert's only in his 4th start. And they're trying to figure out a lot of things with this offensive line as well, which certainly doesn't help. But overall, how can you not be happy if you're a Chargers fan? Even if this season doesn't work out, the pick of Justin Herbert looks like he's at least going to be a good NFL quarterback. And then the question is, how much does he develop some of the more intricacies stuff, the attention to detail stuff, and become a potentially elite quarterback. So good stuff for the Chargers. And then the Eagles, as we mentioned, are going to be at 17. They're going to climb up a spot. Man, this team just isn't very good, though. They're going to be a playoff team. I think they're almost a lock to win the NFC East at this point, especially beating the Giants this week is going to be huge for them. Their schedule is going to lighten up, but they were supposed to, kind of trounce the Giants, and they didn't. They just don't really have an identity as a team. And I was tweeting in the 3rd, 4th quarter of this game that Doug Peterson's just got to go. I mean, he just hasn't been a good coach since Frank Reich left. The offense doesn't have an identity. They seem to find crazy, stupid ways to shoot themselves in the leg every single week. And they're not really going anywhere this season, but they probably will win the NFC East. So then we have a tier gap up. to teams that, again, still are not really playoff teams in my mind, but are teams that are much more in the hunt for the playoffs. And I would absolutely not be surprised if any of these teams, 4 teams in this next tier, made the playoffs. And one or two of them will, because there's 14 playoff teams this year. But the Bears at 16, I mean, Bears fans, did you just want to be in the top 10 because you knew this was coming, or did you actually think you were a top 10 team? I mean, the last 2-3 weeks in the comments have been just total attacks on me. The classic, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Does he even watch football? The Bears are 5-1. It doesn't matter who you beat. Did you just start watching football this year? Like, did 2018 tell you nothing? You need to be able to score points in this league. You can take on the Rams and have a cute first half and really try real hard to keep that game close and win 16-14. But it's just not a sustainable way to win football games against good teams. It just isn't. And we all knew it from an outsider perspective that this is about where the Bears are. And I've said nothing other than that. That's why after a rough loss against a good team, they're only going to come down one spot, because this is where most people knew that they belonged. Right in that 15-16 range, they're a solid, quality football team. They are going to play in a lot of close games. It's not like I bet on the Rams or something, or told people to bet on the Rams. They do keep games close, but it's the ability to finish games and, frankly, keep up with really good offenses like the Rams have. You can only play good defense for so long in the NFL in 2020, and it's just not sustainable for the Bears. I mean, they really do have a bottom 5 to 7 offense in the league. So, yeah, they might win 10 games this year. They might get that 7th wild card spot. But where is that going to go? It's going to be 2018 all over again, where you're relying on a field goal to win 17-16 in the first round against Nick Foles. So, -1 for the Bears. And then the Browns are going to drop down 2 spots. They remain a quality team, but they did lose Odell Beckham this week, which is certainly going to hurt. And another team is having a big jump here. So, not a great week for the Browns to lose your key offensive player. They really were doing a good job getting Odell going. And Baker continues to be a bit of an issue, though this week he was really solid. But yeah, the Browns are down 2 here. I think they're very much in the playoff hunt, but not a Super Bowl contender. And then the Colts are going to stay put. They were on bye this week. Excited to see how they look coming off of the bye against the Detroit Lions. A chance to really pick up some momentum. That was a huge comeback win they had the week before the bye. So they're going to stay put here at 14, certainly in the playoff hunt. And then the Raiders going to drop down 1 spot here. Again, kind of similar to the Bears, but on the flip side, I do think they're a better team than the Bears, because at least the Raiders' problems are on defense instead of offense. But after they beat the Chiefs, Raiders fans wanted to be ranked in the top 10, and I basically said, a huge win, good for you, like your offense is really solid, but you still Derek Carr at quarterback, who is not going to be a consistently elite quarterback. He's not going to be consistently like Rodgers, Mahomes, Russ. And also that defense had a great second half against the Chiefs, but that is just not what the Raiders defense is. It's just not a talented defense, and that showed this week. Tom Brady just picked them apart. So at least the Raiders' problems are on defense and not offense. I still like them as kind of a wild card team that's not an easy out. But yeah, not a good week for the Raiders. That defense just showed the issues, to say the least. Then we have a tier gap up, and we got 3 teams in this next tier. And these are teams that I think are very solid playoff contenders. And that's going to start with the Arizona Cardinals, who took down the Seattle Seahawks. What a comeback that was. They're starting to get an identity on offense. They're starting to be able to push the ball downfield a little more here with Kyler Murray, which you like to see. So they're finding their identity on offense, which you like to see. But what is really important here is this defense is coming into its own. Get Isaiah Simmons out there, Vance Joseph. I mean, what are we doing here? He just locked this game for you with a huge pick 6, showed off that range at the middle linebacker position. He might not be perfect. He might make some mistakes. Well, newsflash, Devondre Campbell is a 5-6 year veteran, and he's also going to do that. So at least put the freak out there. At least let him learn through those mistakes. So let's get Isaiah Simmons out there. This secondary, if you count Isaiah Simmons as part of the coverage unit, could be really dominant. I mean, Budda Baker's been incredible coming off that contract extension. Byron Murphy, who to me was a top 10 player in the 2019 class. I almost had him as a blue chip prospect. I thought he was a phenomenal corner prospect. He is looking like at least a high-level starter in this league. You still got Pat Pete out there. You got Isaiah Simmons. This is a good-looking secondary. I worry about their front seven, but yeah, I mean, they matched up, frankly, relatively well to the Seahawks offense. So +4 for the Arizona Cardinals. And then the LA Rams are going to stay put after beating the Bears in about the same fashion as I predicted. Solid offense. The defense for the Rams is really good. I don't really have much to add on the Rams analysis. That was a big win, taking down a team that I think they're going to vie for a playoff spot for. They're going to have some tough NFC West opponents coming up. We're going to learn a little bit more about the Rams and where they stack up in the NFC West. But both the Rams and Cardinals I see as really serious wild card contenders. And then the Bills are going to drop down a spot into this tier, which, to be fair, these three teams here, the Bills, Rams, and Cardinals, I don't see any of them as playoff locks. I can see worlds where they fall out of the playoff competition. And with the way the Bills are playing right now, I think that could very well happen. They've lost 2 in a row, and frankly, only beating the Jets by 8 and being in a situation where Sam Darnold has a chance to go and win the game, or at least tie it up on the final drive, like that alone is kind of a loss. Like, the Jets are a team that if you are a good team, you blow out by 2 scores. And the Bills just didn't do that. Josh Allen continued to struggle as a passer this week. The defense played better this week, but everyone plays good against the Jets. So I just have not been impressed by the Bills over the last 3 weeks. I think they're reeling a little bit. I think that they peaked a little bit early, and they're having a hard time getting back to that for a large number of reasons. It's not just Josh Allen, but he's certainly a part of that. So then we have a tier gap up, and I think these next 9 teams, I would be quite surprised if they were not playoff teams. So that's going to start with the New Orleans Saints. I just frankly have been impressed by a different team that's going to pass them up here in a second. They're still a really good football team. Their defense has just not been as good as I anticipated. I thought this would be one of the best defenses in the league. It's been the opposite of that. But Drew Brees, really impressive this week, just carving up a Panthers defense that is carvable, to be honest. Like, it's just really young, and Drew Brees just outsmarted them. But they're going to get Michael Thomas back. They had no Emmanuel Sanders. It was a good week for the Saints, don't get me wrong. I just have been more impressed by a different team that's going to pass them up. And then we have the Tennessee Titans. They're only going to drop down 1. You know, a lot of power rankings are going to have them dropping down 3, 4, 5 spots this week. I just don't overreact. I didn't think they were a top 5 team to begin with, like Titans fans were begging for. But they did come up. They come out and put up a good comeback effort against the Steelers. This game would have gone to overtime if Gostkowski makes the kick. So I do think the Titans are a playoff caliber team. I don't see a lot of competition in the AFC South. We'll see what the Colts look like here. But yeah, I mean, they're a really solid football team. I think it's a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense. I don't consider either elite, but all in all, a really good football team, but not to me a team I can picture winning the Super Bowl. Tannehill just is really good, but I don't fully trust him in a, 4 straight playoff games type of world. I think you see halves here and quarters here where he just doesn't look the part as an elite quarterback, but he's having a really good season all in all. Then we have the San Francisco 49ers are going to climb up +3. This is the team that I talked about really impressing me, and a lot of people are going to have to bump these Niners up 12, 13, 14 spots over the last couple weeks. I did not jump ship on the Niners like most people did, and I stood there and took a lot of flack for it. Now, I did drop them down into the teens because there were certainly some concerning moments, especially when they got blown out by the Dolphins. But this was a team that we knew was going to start slow. They had Debo injured. Brandon Ayuk as a rookie also injured coming into play. And with the way that this offense is shaping up, they are looking like an elite top offense, obviously paired with Kyle Shanahan, who just went back to the lab for that Rams game and brought that work back to just outwit and dominate a Bill Belichick defense this week. Just they're blocking well on all fronts. The play calling has been great. And then you mix in Ayuk and Debo and Kittle. You have just outstanding playmakers. And defensively, I think a lot of people are freaking out about the Nick Bosa injury, Well, look, they also have two guys named D Ford and Arik Armstead who have not been out there for this team, and the pass rush hasn't been great, but you got to give Robert Saleh a ton of credit. This defense has been really good against the Rams and the Patriots. They have bunkered down. They at least play disciplined, and they know the scheme extremely well. They fly around. They're still a very fast defense. So while they aren't an elite defense, and they might not have the upside of the team that they were last year for that reason, they do have an elite offense that I think is on pace to be better than it was last year, and at least a solid, disciplined, tough defense that isn't going to get blown out a lot. So I'm really impressed by the Niners. I think if they come out and beat Seattle this week, they very much are back in the Super Bowl conversation, but they definitely have more warts than this next 6 teams who are going to be a tier gap up. So we got the Seattle Seahawks. I'm interested to see what Seahawks fans think about this, dropping down 4 spots. They pick up their first loss of the season, but the problem with the Seahawks is, A, they never play in a normal game. And that's a funny joke, but there's a reason for that. For one, their defense just sucks. Like, they're going to give up about 30 points a week, and that's going to be a problem for any quarterback. We've seen the best quarterbacks over the last decade struggle with that from time to time. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is this offense is just it's extremely explosive and dynamic, but it's very one-dimensional. It is very dependent on Russell Wilson creating these moonball shots and making these spectacular plays, and he is going to make 4 or 5 or 6 of those a game. But there is an element, I don't want to call it luck, because it is very much by design, right? They know that is what their biggest strength is Russell Wilson's unparalleled deep ball ability and these receivers that can make these plays. But that part of the game is always going to be fluky, or again, not lucky, but unpredictable. And it leads to a lot of 3 and outs. It leads to some mistakes by Russell Wilson, as we saw in this game here. What was it, 3 interceptions? The play-to-play consistency isn't on the level of some of these other offenses. So while they're going to put up points, they're going to have these amazing games, they are going to put some stress on this really bad defense a lot of times as well, because either they don't connect on those things and they go 3 and out, or they have 5-play drives, or they do connect and it's still a 3-play drive, but they're scoring like that and the defense is just exhausted. So the Seahawks have some problems. They're very much in this top tier for a reason. They were my Super Bowl pick in the NFC. I'm not even going to back off of that quite yet. They need to get Jamal Adams back out there on defense. But yeah, this was a concerning loss for the Seahawks. And I just think that I've been more impressed as well by the other 2 teams in the NFC that are going to jump them. So the Packers are going to stay put at number 5. They went in and took out a solid Houston Texans team. I mean, keep in mind the Texans were coming off a win and then a game against the Tennessee Titans, where, in my opinion, if they win the coin toss, they probably win that game. So they go into Houston without David Bakhtiari, without a receiver capable of being on an NFL roster outside of Devontae Adams, without most of their secondary, without Aaron Jones, and they just blow the Texans out. Like, they are a very good football team. They are trying to show that the embarrassing loss to the Bucs was just a bad outing. Things just didn't go their way. I think there are some problems on this team as well, especially at that receiver spot. This team just, as good as the offense is, if they get into a situation where they need to pick up the pace and throw the ball around the yard, I still don't fully trust them because of these receivers. Like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, again this week, showed that he is just a stick without arms. Like, he, to me, has some of the worst hands I've ever seen of any NFL player. But yeah, good week for the Packers. And then we're going to have the Bucs climbing up 2 spots. I talked about this, how the Bucs were behind the Packers because they had shown some more warts than the Packers, but I wanted to see if they can repeat what they did and garner some of this momentum, because I did say that the Bucs would have a slower start and pick up pace as the season went on, and that is exactly what we're seeing. The offense here is getting scary, to be honest, and that's saying a lot. after week where we spent a lot of time talking about this defense. So this could become, to me, the most complete team in the NFL if they keep this up. They're getting Antonio Brown in here in a couple weeks, which is just stupid. They already have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Gronk is playing like his old self. The offensive line has been outstanding. You have Tom Brady looking like old Tom Brady. It is just really cool what's going down in Tampa Bay, climbing very quickly here. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to jump up one after beating the Tennessee Titans. They are just so physical. They are disciplined, well coached. I think Big Ben is solid. He's like a 10-ish, top 10-ish quarterback. I do question if they ended up getting into any shootouts, if they could really drop back, similar to kind of like what we said about the Packers for different reasons. But that's something that they're able to contain very well because this defense is so good. The offensive line is so good, and they do at least have amazing playmakers to carry some of that load for the offense. And they are going to be playing the Baltimore Ravens this week. This is going to be one of the games of the year. We're going to see it again on Thanksgiving. I can't wait. I would love to see this game flexed to Sunday Night Football because, man, this is going to be a riot. The amount of toughness and physicality in this game between the Steelers and the Ravens is going to be great. Really interesting matchup with how much these teams want to run the ball. So, this is going to be a heater. The Ravens were on bye this week and are going to climb up a spot. And then the Chiefs at number 1, showing that they are just that well-rounded, best team in the league. They've shown over the last couple weeks that they can win in different ways. The week before it was running the ball. This week it was special teams and, again, running the ball well. And Patrick Mahomes obviously is a nice crutch to have if things don't go your way in those other departments. But yeah, the Chiefs remain the best team in football. So there you go, your Week 8 NFL Power Rankings. Again, guys, please do hit that like button. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Cheers as always, and we'll see you at the next one. Peace out.